Welcome to this week's episode of Awakening with Lynleigh Rose. I'm here with Erich Sanders. First of all, thank you for being here, Erich.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. I appreciate being here as well.
So, Erich is a fascinating human being. As I've gotten to know him over the past 6 months, he's been my client. That's how we initially met. He grew up in Georgia, first of all, and now he's in the Charleston area. He is an entrepreneur. He is a wilderness survivalist. He is a travel enthusiast. He is an herbalist. He has so many other facets of him. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Not a problem. I guess that just means I'm confusing is probably what that means. But thank you very much.
It means you're extremely interesting is what it means. So I have really enjoyed getting to know you and just watching your journey. It's been really inspirational to me, just honestly. I really admire your determination to reach your goals, to do the hard work, such as looking at yourself and put yourself in vulnerable spaces because you want the result, because you want to grow and you know that that's the way. And that's something that's really admirable. And especially for men that I've worked with, it can be difficult to show up authentic, to let yourself be seen by a woman in this space. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge that and ask you, how did you become that kind of person?
Well, I was raised since I was 9 by my grandparents that I refer to as mom and dad. And one of the great things that my grandfather especially taught me was to ask really good questions of just as a whole about life, about perspective, about how I want to live. And I just followed that tradition. Has probably been the biggest thing. Like he asked me probably when I was about 14, he started asking me like simple questions like, what's the difference between a man and a boy?
Wow.
And I didn't have an answer. And that wasn't the point. He just wanted me to think about it. And then a few weeks later, he's like, so what do you think about the question? And I was like, well, I don't know. And he goes, well, think about people who are the same age roughly, but one you consider a boy and one you consider a man, and look at the difference. And so I started doing that, looking at what the quality. And so we talked about this every so often, probably until I was about 19 or 20. And really the question was to purposely make me think, how do you want to live? And the answer I came up with at that age was a man takes care of his responsibilities, whether they're imposed on him by himself, like a family and wife, or if they are imposed on him by society, like, keeping your yard clean or not stacking trash around your yard. That was what I came up with. But what's funny is to this day, I don't know what his answer was. The point wasn't to give me an answer. The point was to ask the question and get me thinking.
Yeah.
And so that practice of asking really good questions of myself and the world and how do I want to live has really served me. Like when I got older, like what kind of life do I want to live? And I'm like, well, there was only really 2 paths that looked like fun for me. One of them was to stay in a small place and work the land, basically. Just live in the woods, work the land, because we lived well back in the woods. Not completely back for most of it, but well back in the woods. Or to become James Bond. Like it was like, except not kill people. It was like to like travel, speak multiple languages, go places, drive fast cars, which we shouldn't have been doing on the back roads of Georgia, but and so, or become James Bond. Like, well, James Bond sounds like the most fun. So I left and went and, did traveling, did adventure. I was like, well, my life's kind of going to be about experience. I'm not really an adventure junkie, but I am an experience junkie. I want to do an experience and many different things. So that's how I kind of live my life.
I love it. Yeah, I really love that he asked those open questions and that you've been really on the journey to decide for yourself how you wanted to live and what that means to be a man. I want to ask you, what was the place that you were at when you decided to start working with me? And what were your intentions and goals, and what did you want to get out of it?
I asked myself a couple years ago, roughly in like 2023, what would be like if I knew I was going to die in like 3 weeks, what things would I be sad that I didn't get to do? Basically, three things came up. That was one, to become a Native American style scout, so become an expert in wilderness survival. The other one was to grow my business to the size that I wanted, and then to have a good relationship. Those are really the main three things that came up. And so I was like, well, because 3 weeks I figure is enough time. I can go say everything I need to say to all my family members, all my friends. I can go visit my grandmother's. I can go eat at my favorite aunt's cooking a couple more times and go to my favorite restaurants. And then I can go, still squeeze in a camping trip. But when all that's done, when I'm sitting on the porch waiting for the last few days, what were the things that was sad that I didn't get to do? So those are three things that came up. So I just decided, for the most part, that was going to be my journey. So I was working on those three, but it wasn't going fast enough. And then I had to add, because the others are all dependent on it, I had to add my health in there. And then I started asking myself, how do I learn the quickest? And I realized that everything that I'm really great at, I learned from someone else. And maybe it's just how I learn. So I just said, you know what? Let me get a coach for each one of those areas to help me get through it, because it might take me 10 years to figure out what a coach can teach me in two.
Mm, incredible. Yeah. Well, just observing you as a client, I can say that you are open. Like you genuinely want to be there and you're learning for yourself. Not because anyone told you to be there, but you want to improve that area. It's so important to you. So let me ask you, were you expecting or surprised by what you learned in the course of working with me? What are some of the main lessons that you personally have taken away and have incorporated and integrated into your life on that path?
What I learned is that Lynleigh Rose is mean.
I was just choked on my tea, by the way. Okay, elaborate.
No, no. No, when working with you, you definitely give me what I need, even though it's not necessarily it's not that it's not what I asked for. It's that I didn't see the route, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's I ask you to work on it with me, and then I think the route's going to look like this, but then the route looks like that. And so I'm like, I'm very direct. I like specific answers. Give me the step by step, and I will follow the step by step like a machine. Okay. If I need to, whatever, work on this every day, work on grounding every day, cool. I got no problem with that. I will set aside a time and I'll work on it. But what what you showed me is a lot more of looking inward, which I'm more of an outward looker, I would say, and asking me where I was in relation to it, and then being able to decipher that. That's what you helped me with. Like, I thought my problem was technique or practice when it came to relationships.
Hmm.
But it turns out mine was actually the problem. The biggest problem was self love. Even though looking back, you took me through it in a different roundabout way. You just didn't say it. You let me kind of come to that conclusion. Like, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? And I realized now, having looking back over the last 6 months or so, is like you were showing me a route, even though it looked nothing like the route I was expecting. And that was, in fact, what I needed. So mine had a lot less to do with, with techniques and procedures, and more to do with developing my own self-love. And that's been huge for me.
Mm, yeah, completely agree. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I would love for you to share a little bit about what has changed for you in how you approach a relationship or dating or approaching women or, moving towards the goal of being in a relationship. What has shifted for you?
I did some work kind of right before I worked with you, so there's definitely some overlap. The work I did before was more relating to trauma in relation to women. To a large degree, I had a lot of apprehension just around women as a whole, that I was always like a wall up. And so he helped me to work on breaking down that wall. And then working with you kind of helped me develop self love, which allowed more of that self love easier to get into me. So now, whereas before, when I thought about, asked myself the question, do I love myself? The answer was definitely no. Now, when I think about do I love myself, there's like a warm feeling that comes up, like almost like a smile color. So I can say yes. Am I, at the ultimate level of love? No, but but there is a huge shift in the two, and that kind of allowed me to do more in the things that I was already working, even though it wasn't my intent going into it, was not that, but it definitely allows me to do more. I have more bandwidth. It's like don't have the brakes on, because before it was like when I was working, everything was like I had the brakes on while I'm trying to go forward.
Yeah.
Um, so with you, you helped me kind of get down through the different layers into self-love and then kind of work from there, because it affects your self-worth, what you deserve, or what you feel you deserve, I should say. It increases just how you treat yourself, taking better care of yourself and your health, and even down to dressing and grooming. All those things help, and you have kind of more belief in yourself. So those are all different layers that come up. Is now I'm a lot more calm. I've always been a laid back person as a whole, but I was talking to one of my friend's daughters. She's mentioned that I had. She's like, "Yeah, you kind of changed. You seem different." I was like, so I asked her like, "What is different?" And she was like, there's like you've always been laid back, but you seem more almost like you're more zen. And I was like, okay, that's a weird way to put it. And I was like, and I asked her to elaborate, and she just said like, you always are laid back, but there was always like an underlying like nervous energy about you, a resistance about you, and now you don't seem to have that. And I was like, oh, okay, so making jokes about Nama, I'm like a monk, I'm all zen and everything. So it's fun. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's kind of how my journey has went over the past 6 months. And honestly, because of that, I know we were working on relating to women. It also helped me to accomplish my other goals. There's been carryover into the other areas of my life. Like I'm moving through my goals faster than I thought I would over the past 6 months, and I'm a lot more focused.
That's amazing. So, for those listening, men who are kind of curious about what coaching could do for them, like what this path has been like for you, I know there's going to be questions about, well, okay, you worked on self-love, but like, what does that really look like? And do you want to share any examples of what this work looks like, what it feels like, what the experience is, what is your day-to-day life?
Well, I mean, my journey started in the emotional side of things like 8 years ago, something like that. I mean, I was coming out of divorce, and I realized that I was working doing a job in Pennsylvania, and I was sitting there one day, and the things that used to give me joy weren't giving me joy. Pretty much, if you give me a patch of woods, I'm always happy. I come back, relax, go for a walk in the woods, and I come back happier. And it wasn't having the same effect, and I didn't realize why. And then one day I was working, and I was like, you know what? I need a drink after work. And I was like, that's weird. I've never had that thought before. And I was like, did I mean I wanted a drink after work, or that I needed a drink? And it was clearly I needed a drink. And I was like, that's a weird thing. If I need a drink, that's a problem. If I just want a drink, whatever, it is what it is. So then I started thinking about it, like then I realized kind of in that transition of that time that I was numbing because I was coming out of divorce and all the pain related to that. And so I was like, okay, so I need to look at some things if I'm feeling like I need to do something to get something that we all know is an escape to certain, or can be an escape. If you need it, it's definitely an escape versus, just kind of going down that path. So I asked myself, the woods isn't making me as happy. What's going on? And I realized that I was numbing out to a certain degree and I was numbing out pain, but you can't really selectively numb. If you're numbing out pain, you're also numbing out that much love. You're also numbing out that much connection. It's all kind of, if you just go numb, you go numb. There's no the level of what you're cutting off. And so I started doing some evaluation and really, looking on YouTube, looking on other places, and kind of found the practice of like grounding and being grounded. Then there's presence. Then there's containment, which goes into relationships. And, as a whole, you contain your guy friends, you contain family, you contain whatever. And all that kind of came out. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So as the years went by, I read more and watched videos and started piecing together, what is funny is I had realized that I had done all those things in various situations, but I never knew what it was and I never knew how to turn it on or off. Because most of us have been present at some point. There's something that we do that we get lost in. We really don't, we don't know if we've been at it for 30 minutes or for 2 hours. It's just, we just get lost in what we're doing. And that's really presence. We just need to, you just learn to focus it. And it's kind of like the same thing, which, you've been scratching your dog's head while you're looking on the phone or watching TV. Your hand hasn't stopped moving, but your dog will bump you and let you know, hey, I'm still here. What he's asking for is presence. He's not technically asking for a pet because you were still petting him. What he's asking for is that at least a little bit of connection in relation to that. And so when it comes to dealing with people, with women, presence is incredibly important to women. I have always been good at one thing, which is being masculine. That I've always has always been me, that I'm really, really good at. And I honestly didn't realize, because I've spent most of my life in the country, that was not as common as I assumed it was until I started moving into cities more, because like I said, until I left New York City when I was 9. And then the largest town I lived in till in 2000 was about 4,000 people. And sometimes it was out to where our next neighbor was a mile away. Wow. And I, moved into Savannah and I'm like, this place really doesn't have masculine men. Cause I grew up in the country with country people and rednecks. So it was like, they have a tendency to be very masculine.
To the extreme.
They may be also closed-minded, but they're not lacking in masculinity, open-mindedness. That may be a different thing. But I grew up with that, and I grew up with a strong grandfather, and my uncles were all around, and aunts, and so I kind of got to learn masculinity from other men. And so now when I see it, it's like it's interesting that men gravitate to masculine men just as a whole. It just feels comfortable to them, I guess. And so when I'm out and about and when I'm with people, that's one of the things that I'll notice people start to gravitate toward me because of that. And masculinity is something that you really have to decide to take on. It's not a natural state, in my opinion. Masculinity to me is, and I know pretty much everyone says the same thing, providing, protecting, and containing, basically, a given environment. You're kind of the wall that protects your loved one and the people you care about from the rest of the world. And you contain men, and as a group, if you can get a group of men that are all very masculine, it's even a stronger wall. And that's really one of the things that I'm kind of more drawn to as I've become kind of developing kind of a group of masculine men that are kind of together and like teaching masculinity to the next generation, because it's not a natural state. It has to be taught, if that makes sense. Like women, girls, dogs, children, boys, even before they hit puberty, basically all kind of run off of love. You know, they feel appreciated, they feel loves that nourishes them. Men, we run off of respect. And that's really what, just basically what it comes down to. If you want to basically, for lack of better terminology, feed a man emotionally, you have to give him respect. And I've asked many men, specifically those that are masculine, like, if you had to choose, if in your relationship you got 70% respect, 20% appreciation and trust that you would do the right thing, and then 10% love, would you be happy in that relation? Everyone is like, yes, I would be incredibly happy with that situation. And so that tells you exactly how important it is for men to be respected. But you really need men to show you how to be men. You need almost like a runway to get you to jump from one to the other. And it's kind of a confusing time because it's like, you have value, you are loved as a kid. And then that value at a certain point starts to drop off and people expect you to be a man. And then you don't get love, but you also don't get respect.
Yeah.
And so if you have a man in your life who'll show you this is the next pathway to get what you want because you have changed, then it's a fairly easy transition. But a lot of guys don't have that, or they don't have a man in their life who can show that to them and make them realize now you've switched over. You get to be a man, which is great. Being a man is great. Once you decide to embrace it. With me, I had my grandfather and my uncles and all that around. I have a big family, and so that masculinity and it also includes the ability to lead, which is a huge one, which is part of containment, but it's the ability to lead. Like a lot of the problems that I see in relationships from the man side is to a certain degree, the apprehension to lead, kind of take on responsibility, because that's how you learn to lead, is to take on responsibility. So, simple example is going to be a woman says, she's hungry. And it's like, what do you want to eat? And the thing is, and she's like, I don't know, or whatever the question may be, it's not a clear answer. And for me, I look at that as she's giving me room to lead. So I just choose one of, y'all's favorite 5 restaurants and just go there. It's very simple. She's giving you opportunity. If you go to the movie theater and she wants to watch a movie, you're like, if she wants to watch a movie, be like, hey, what movie do you watch? She'll go, I want to watch this one. But if she doesn't, if she says, oh, I don't know, that generally is my sign that she wants me to take the lead in that. And some women are going to be offended by that. I don't know. Like I've heard of people who are like, they went to hold the door for a woman and she was offended. I live in the South. That really doesn't happen.
I want to pipe in here as a woman because, yeah, as you're talking, I just feel like it like relaxes my nervous system when I don't have to think everything's up to me, when I don't feel like I have to make all the decisions, because I do that in my life. I do that with my kids. If I'm with a man, I it's not like I'm just like tell me what to do, although sometimes that's perfect. But sometimes we both have opinions we want to talk about. But for the default to be that he takes charge or he takes over when I don't feel like it is like incredibly attractive, and it just calms my nervous system. But the women who get triggered by that, maybe they are offended if he opens the door, right? Are the women who have disconnected from their feminine and have unhealed wounds, unhealed trauma, or still have unresolved stuff inside them about masculinity and feminine energy within them. And I used to be like that. So I know the difference. And I know that it takes it's a conscious journey of looking within and asking within myself, why am I triggered by this? If this man wants to do something nice for me, and then it always goes into, oh, is this because I feel like I'm weak? He thinks I can't, and I want to prove myself that I can, right? And so, we can talk about that for a whole podcast, but it's just interesting to look at that, looking at the shift that you have just talked about is so essential with boys to men, learning the main principles of being a man, they were passed down to you, but not to every boy doesn't go through that. And there are many men that are confused these days about how to be a man. What would you say they could do, or what would be the steps that those men out there who are feeling confused, who don't want to step on women's toes and, be the toxic masculine and are afraid to show up in their masculine, um, what would you say if you were to coach someone that was struggling with that?
The first thing that I would say would be to ask yourself the question, what is your relationship to masculinity? If you hate masculinity, no matter all the suggestions I can give you, practices to do every day, but if you hate it, you're never going to learn it. I can't teach you something you don't want to learn. And so it would first be ask yourself simple questions about masculinity. If I ask you how you feel about masculinity, you have to yourself decide what you think masculinity is before you can answer that question. So that leads to another question. And so I would, start asking myself questions like that. What does it mean? And then do I want to be it? If you don't want to be it and you're only doing it because society says you should or you don't want to be, then that's one thing we need to look at. The first thing, if you don't know what masculinity looks at, I would say find some friends or find some people, maybe they're friends or not, who are masculine and hang around those people to see what traits they have and what masculinity would look like. Because it's like anything, you can't, if you don't know where you're going, you can't really design a plan to get there. And so I would first off ask questions to hang out with guys that are masculine, whether they be at your gym. And just one caveat to that, make sure masculinity is not loud or in your face. It can be blunt. I'm not saying it's not blunt, because masculine will tell you you're messing up right now, which is not a bad thing. That's just being direct, but it's not loud. Anyone who has to say, I'm masculine and people should treat me a certain way, typically is not that masculine. The quiet masculine is generally at least closer to. But I see a lot of people yelling about masculinity. That's really not. If it is your state, it is. You don't see dogs yelling that I'm a dog. That they just are. You don't see cats yelling I'm a cat. They just are. If you're going to be a masculine man, you are. And so you want to look for men that are truly masculine but are not real loud about it. It's just kind of how they live their life.
Yeah.
That would be the second thing to, because one, you're asking if you want to be it, what does it look like, which is going to lead to other questions. And then you're going to surround yourself with it, which is in fact the quickest way to adopt something, in my mind, is to surround yourself with it. Change your environment is going to change it far quicker than anything else.
So I wonder, have the question come up, how can you know? If you want a mentor for something, you want to pick the right mentor. You want to make sure you're going to surround yourself with, right? Like if you want like a masculine like role model, how can you know if it's, there's the extreme toxic masculine, right? It could be masculine, but also unhealed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, how can people know what is the toxic form of masculinity that people are talking about and the women are saying, please don't be this? And what is an actual healthy masculine so that they can know the right role models to pick?
One of the easiest ways when you're looking at mentors and things like that is that person where I want to be? You want to choose a mentor and men that are closer to what you want to be. I don't get business advice from people who have never run a business.
Yeah, and I think just knowing the difference between like a toxic and a healthy, if we could go by look at the lists of like these are the qualities in toxic and this is healthy, but really what it comes down to is what that girl noticed in you, that person that noticed that you were more zen and grounded.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feeling. right?
Hmm.
It's an energy where you feel that person's grounded, you know they're authentic, they're aligned, they're in integrity with themselves. They're in that place where they truly want to grow and want to respect women, right? I think that's one of the biggest things. Is like the men that just want respect and then don't respect women. That's how you
Hmm.
know that's just not it's not right, right?
Yeah.
It's basic. Yeah.
The other thing that I also wanted to say is, um, in my philosophy, the way I look at things is the whole purpose of life is to give, and then the other portion is to love. It's like we look at masculinity and femininity in two different ways, and we respond to it. For instance, and I probably said this to you, but it's like someone breaks in the house and you have kids and family. Most of the time, the woman will want to grab the children and run, and if she can't run, she will try to hide, barricade him or something. The man's instinct is to go out and face the attacker. Okay, and you kind of realize that to a certain degree, a man has to have a dark side. Everybody seems to think that everyone should be light, and but you need both sides, because a man's goes out in his mind. He's thinking somebody's dying tonight. Okay. It's hopefully won't be me. Okay. But whoever just broke in my house is going to have a really bad day. And you kind of go out with that mentality in mind that somebody's dying. It may be him. It might be me, but it will not be my family.
Wow.
And that is realistically how a man's mind works. There's still both reactions are examples of love, but it's just because our brains work differently. They're both examples of love. Your intent is to protect the family, but a man by nature, and that's how it should be, in my opinion, that a man goes out and he creates a safe barrier. That's part of that wall we talked about earlier. That, yeah, somebody's, you break in the house, somebody, and I'm there. No, I'm not there, whatever. It's really bad for me, but whatever the case may be. But then you're threatening my family, me and my family. So I honestly don't trust men that I don't see a dark side in. Like, if I, I know it sounds weird, but I don't, if I look at a man and I don't see any darkness in his eyes, I'm just like, I don't trust that person, because that's the creepiest of them all, in my opinion. I,
Yeah.
you only see that in really, really, like, really messed up people. But if I see a man who's going through some stuff and I see some darkness, and I was like, yeah, there's a certain amount of darkness, because like, if femininity is light and expression and nurturing, it's like, well, there's a Native American thing that, basically men take life, women give life. And that's really, part of the principle. We've got to kill the buffalo so that the family can eat.
Wow.
We don't have the side enough, mean enough for us to go take something's life, whether that be a deer or food or even growing stuff, ripping it out of the ground. We're mowing down perfectly healthy trees to plant crops
Hmm.
there, or to raise the chickens, or whatever the case may be throughout history.
Hmm.
And the whole family dies. And so, that's one of the reasons we kind of need each other. There's another Native American expression that goes something, don't quote me, goes something along the lines of, a woman's highest and most noble purpose is to lead a man to his soul. And a man's highest purpose is to protect her while she's doing her purpose,
Mm.
give her the space to do her purpose. So that's really kind of the philosophy. I don't really, people like, oh, everyone should be loved. In theory, that would be nice. In theory, that would be great. If no one did anything bad to anyone, that would be great, but that's not realistic. And it's kind of men's job to kind of protect that space, to where inside of this space, that is a reality.
Yeah. So I want to share what came up for me when you're sharing this. It just resonates so deeply with me because it's that darkness. When you're talking about the darkness that men have to also have, that balance
Hmm.
is so important. is what women are looking for. Right? We want the man to have that dark streak, that protector, that warrior part of him. It's the most attractive. Like I want that, my man to have that walking down the street and he knows if someone's going to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that actually triggers something primal inside me as a woman that's like, it's so attractive just to imagine like that is a part that is so attractive. And also, if we want to look at in the bedroom and like, intimacy, when you're connected to your primal innate parts, that's when it's the best.
Mm-hmm.
And so just owning and embracing that part, I think is so important that we all need to just remember. And also it's the men who are, I'm just gonna say it, overly going to retreats and doing meditations and trying to get, doing psychedelics and in this like love vibe, love and bliss, that is actually not attractive to me at all. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe it is for other women but we all have a certain polarity, right? And if we're in a feminine polarity, a feminine energy, such as myself being in the feminine energy, wanting a man who's in the masculine, and women who are maybe more masculine want a more feminine man,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's no judgment. It's all about the polarity within us, but being true to what our polarity is, what our energy is. For me, that's been a journey even to accept my feminine energy. And I think a lot of women actually need to go on a journey to accept and really embrace the feminine inside them.
Mm-hmm.
They may be in an unhealed state and feeling like I'm a feminist and like women's rights and unhealed and don't want to be in a relationship with men, maybe even turn to women. I'm not saying everyone is like this, but some women may be the case, not want to be with a man because there's something unhealed within them.
Mm-hmm.
And so just looking at what's here is so important, just part of that process of being able to express and feel the fulfillment of being a man or a woman and that connection with another of the opposite pole is that's why I'm here. I'm here to learn how to do that, to fully express
Mm-hmm.
myself. It's part of my journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I have seen some of those guys, and there's a group of, well, I mean, one, there are a group of people who they want men they're attracted to men that are feminine, and they typically step into the masculine. And you need polarity. I have seen that work before. And if you and that, but that's very much a smaller subset of people. But yeah, but then the other one comes where it's like, oh, we need to get into embodiment and things like that. And then men learn to operate inside the space that of how a woman operates. And so a lot of it is going to be, if you're with the energy, so to speak, it's typically going to be from about solar plex and up.
Mhm.
Women are much better with light and nurturing and heart and expression through the upper parts of their body. Not saying they can't operate from the lower, but it seems to be more naturally gravitated toward those areas. Whereas the lower below that is kind of where men's superpower is, I guess you could say, where our strength is a normal state. And when you look at from your kind of your gut down, you get more into the grounding, you get more into the rooted things, like the energy of survival and not necessarily flowing, and bringing things into existence, whether that be a safe place for your family, whether that be a home, whether that be a business, whether that be a baby. Like it's like it can
Mhm.
be that creativeness from the man's perspective, from the masculine creativeness is in that body. But there's a lot of guys who have stepped into women's spaces and they've developed a highly developed feminine side, which is not bad for men. There's a lot of men not a lot, but there are some men who have a highly developed masculine and feminine at the same time. There are certain people who have developed both. Prince was one. He had a highly developed sense of feminine with the way he dressed, but he also had a highly developed sense of masculine. No one actually thought he was gay or anything, but he had developed both sides of it. I mean, Elvis is another one who did the same thing. He had a highly developed masculine and feminine. Even The Rock, to a certain degree, has a lot of feminine energy. Not saying it's a bad thing. It's just a different way of being.
Mm.
Where most guys, we're happy to stay in our masculine, get in our masculine, stay in our masculine. And so I would say that developing your masculine doesn't is good for men, and developing your feminine to a certain degree is necessary, but you don't
Mhm.
have to develop to the level of a woman until you get to the point to where you're like, you've stepped over into being more feminine, and that's going to be off-putting to a lot of feminine women,
Yeah.
unless they're looking for feminine men.
Yes, I was just at a meetup here in Paris, one of my first meetups that I've been to, with a group of, it was an English speaking meetup, and there were both men and women, and it was
Mhm.
about like, let's talk deeper, let's like not superficial small talk, let's have real conversations. And it was awesome because like that's what I love. So I was like, I'm sure I'll meet some like-minded people here. I showed up, and of course I did, and we all completely resonated. We were on the same wavelength, we're just the same kind of people. And we had these really amazing conversations. And I want to just share this because I want to hear your perspective. There were these men, and men coming to a space like this, they chose to show up and be real. That was the whole purpose. It's to be authentic, to share your true experience, your feelings, even potentially. And we talked about how it's difficult for some men to even be vulnerable, and they don't want to be seen as overly emotional with a partner. One of them
Mhm.
even mentioned something about, in the past, women might have said that he's overly emotional. And the balance for men to help them understand how to work on this and strengthen this, the feminine part, the intuitive, the being vulnerable and showing up authentic,
Mhm.
and to develop their masculine. And it seems like almost like this impossible task for some men is what I've been hearing. What would you say if you were to speak to these men that are wondering, how do we get that balance?
In my perspective, it's best to learn masculine vulnerability
Mhm.
from men. And that comes back to they stepped into a female space where you're talking about it. Whereas men, we're more likely to show our vulnerability and express it not in talking as much.
Tell
And
me
so,
more.
I'm sorry?
Tell me more. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
So, I mean, you have to look at how men, when men are with men, how do we express our vulnerability? There's a guy who every time I see him, he's a helper who works with several contractors, and every day I walk in and I tell him, I was like, "Hey Kevin, how's it going?" He goes, "Good, Eric, how are you?" And I was like, "Shut up, I hate you." Okay, that basically means I love you to men. That's us being vulnerable with other men. Okay, or if I don't
Okay.
remember to, I'll be like, "Kevin, have I told you I hate you today?" And he goes, "No." I was like, "Okay, it's important to be consistent. I hate you." And that's basically us being vulnerable with other men. Women
How?
hear that and they laugh, but it's not. It doesn't have the same effect. Okay.
So how is that vulnerable?
Basically, I just said I love you without saying I love you.
Ah, okay. So it's
See,
vulnerable,
that
but not
completely went over your head. All guys
okay.
who
It
know
did. Okay,
that.
wait. So it's not outright vulnerability. It's almost
Exactly.
like protecting yourself still.
Well, protect yourself, but it's what we do. Everybody protects themselves. It's not a bad thing, but it's what we
Yeah.
do. We'll
Okay.
be like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
I hate
That's just
you.
how it goes.
Or there's other people who, one of my good friends, we may call him, I'm like, guys will call each other an a-hole. And that's a sign of affection
It's a
among
it's a
us.
term of endearment. Okay. Got it.
Exactly. So, we play a lot rougher with each other because we know what is understood. So that's more masculine to masculine
Mhm.
vulnerability.
Mm.
There are times when we will be like, we'll be like, one of my friends, he dead now, but he'd be like, hey, dude, I want to go fishing this weekend. Neither of us like fishing, okay? But the whole purpose is to go out and talk. If we catch something or don't, doesn't matter. It's like that's not the point. But
So,
and your point is to listen, and there'll be silences. We'll be out there fishing, and there'll be silences where we'll end the conversation, not talk for 20 minutes straight, and then just pick up the conversation because now we've allowed space for us to continue. And so that's more masculine vulnerability with other men.
mm,
Now, with women, it's a little more tricky, especially for men, because we can't, and I know some people are going to have a problem, we can't directly do what we're told to do with women. You have to worry about their feelings. You have to worry about this. You have to worry about that, how things are perceived. And so it's a little more tricky. But when we're being vulnerable with women, most men are going to lean into acts of service, is what it has a tendency to do, or creating space. We look at it as I don't really need you to feel a certain way for you to feel as though you're connected to me. So we're far more likely to move into vulnerability in those ways. Do we need to talk? Yes, we do need to talk. But we also recognize that women are much better at communicating than men are. And so we communicate much, much slower. So sometimes we're communicating something that is important to us, but we'll stop and pause. And then the woman will fill up the rest of it. Technically, I wasn't done, but you ran with it. So I just let you run.
how can women, what can women get from that? To understand men and their need to take their time in their communication and to not just talk, 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 fill it, but to maybe give them space. What would you want in a woman? What could we do better?
One of the things that men value, and I was at a friend's house, a friend contractor up here. I was going over to pick up something, and the space to let us continue talking is huge for men. So one thing I've heard recently, a woman's like, she will literally wait for 30 seconds after a man stopped talking, not say anything for like 30 seconds. And most of the time, the vast majority, actually, it's a really good experiment you'll try, is when a man is expressing himself, wait 30 seconds, count 30 seconds in your head. And then most of the time, the man will start talking again. And then when he gets done, he'll say something to the effect of, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Whereas a lot of women will perceive the silence that he's done talking. And it takes patience, and it's not an easy practice necessary to develop. But if you do that little trick of when he's expressing himself, wait 30 seconds before you say anything else. And many times a man will start talking again. And
Mm.
so then you finally get to hear the whole story. And then he'll generally tell you, like, yeah, that's how I feel. And it was like, and then it's cool.
This is huge.
I just say give it a try. Yeah, and then listening is something that everyone values. But I was at my friend's house. He's a contractor, and me and him were talking. His wife was listening, and then she was just kind of listening to us. And she got up, and because there was a bottle of wine on this side, she got up and went around and got the bottle of wine to fill her glass. And I looked at her and I was like, "You could have just asked for the bottle of wine. We'd have handed it to you." And she goes, "Oh, while y'all were talking, I didn't want to break up the conversation." And I looked at her and went, "And that's why you're wife material." That you stopped and didn't want to interrupt the men talking because we don't necessarily talk as much. She left space for us to do our talking. I was like, "Yeah, that's wife material." I was like, "Yeah, I understand why you married." Like literally,
It's
like,
respect. It's the
yeah,
respect.
Exactly. Nothing will trump respect in a man's mind.
I just, as I'm hearing this, I'm feeling like this one shift, if women gave men the space to express themselves, I'm also a slow communicator, by the way, but that could completely change men in the world, just giving them space to feel respected and just to feel listened to. And it's very interesting. I mean, Eric, we could seriously go on. We're going to have to do more podcasts because there's so many topics here. But I think a lot of this is women feel like they don't have a voice. Like in the past, we've been suppressed. We felt like men are the ones, right, that are running the show. And my opinion doesn't matter. I personally have struggled with this growing up. And so it's almost like this hyper need, like it's a extreme need to talk, to share, to okay, he stopped talking and now I have to come in with everything that I'm here to say to prove that I'm worthy. I'm a human being just as he is, you know. And it's that feeling of like I want to be seen as equal just based on the past history, right, of women. That's the unhealed part because when we start to release that and to find peace within and realize we're not in danger of not being heard in this society, it's all about our internal state of being now. It's not about the past. It's the past programming that runs the show and causes all the problems in our day. So what we need to do is look at the past, release it, right? And then take a breath as a woman and be present with a man and know that there's no urgency to speak in this moment. It's actually more important, perhaps, to listen and to hold space. And that the shift, the profound effects of that, I just feel so deeply that could be a real big key in men and women in our communication.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I would agree with.
So I think we're going to get going, but I would love for you to share just before we go the kind of work that you're stepping into as a coach and a guide for men and what kind of clients you've been working with lately.
Well, full disclosure, I've just started doing this since January 1st. So I am new and learning more and more on this journey. But I think it's an important journey, and it's one that I look forward to helping. But really, for this, I would say it's going to be predominantly men who need to work on their masculinity, which includes boundaries, setting them, holding them. Most guys that I've really talked to, they're men who want relationships with women. They just something has happened to like make it to where they don't feel comfortable either setting boundaries or being masculine or taking the lead, or a lot of times they don't understand kind of what a woman is asking for because it's not a direct thing. Most people have never told men that it's okay to take the lead, that it's okay to say, hey, we're going to go do this, and just find out what their schedule is. Once they get to trust you, you leading is a comfort for them. Just like you mentioned, if that's a hard thing for you to practice and set up, I personally still believe in like ordering for a woman. She tells me what she wants and I order it with the waiter. Eventually it gets to where it's second nature. To this point, I don't really do it. I did it with a friend of mine without even thinking, it wasn't a date, wasn't anything. I'm just, she told me what she wanted. And, we talked about appetizers and then I just ordered for it. Then I went, oh,
I
and I was
love
like,
that.
yes, I did. It didn't even register because I do that with my sister. I do that with, my aunts. I do that, no matter what it is. If my sister, and yes, I'm going to pay. I know that's somehow weird, but I live in the South. No woman has ever had a problem with be paying for anything. And maybe I've heard in other places it can be seen as a problem. I don't know how, but it's just like when I order my sister tells me what she wants, I order it for her. I don't even think about it anymore. So if setting those kind of that frame of this is what I'm going to do as a masculine, and you can either decide you want to be with that or not, that's up to the woman. But and it's like there's this weird stigma that it's either you've got to either be completely passive to women or you've got to be completely dogmatic with women. I never am forceful. I'm the most laid back person ever. And if she doesn't want to be there, she doesn't want to be there. And I leave it at that. But this is how I'm going to operate. And what I found is 99% of the time you don't need to, because you just ask a woman to do for you. If she likes you and respects you, most of the time she's going to do what you ask, because you're not asking for anything exorbitant most of the time. But it's like, if you don't have to force, you just have to ask.
Like, what's an example, just to make this real?
I've been on dates where the first date, I tell her where we're going. And I'm like, whatever. If I plan on walking, we'll walk. I'll be like, hey, wear some shoes you can walk in, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The second time, I won't even tell her where we're going. I'll just tell her what we're doing. We're going to eat crepes. Boom. Third date, I just say, I'm coming to pick you up, and don't say anything about where we're going. It's like, hey, we're going to hang out this time. We'll get some food. Maybe we'll do some other stuff, whatever. And, I've decided while I was driving there that I didn't want to go for Mexican. I want to go for Outback. So I just drive to the place. I haven't told her where we're going. And then, sometimes what is an interesting one is when she asks, like, where are we going? I say, don't worry about it. You're with me. And they look at you and go, huh? Like, what does that mean? What it means is that when you're with me, I'm going to take care of you. And then when you're not with me, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of when you're with me. And I'm going to make sure you get home safe. That's what that means. And they go, okay. It's like this fourth thought. They're just like, and so that's what I mean by stuff like that. Once they get used to your leadership, especially, they've had a couple good experiences. Now they can trust that, yeah, they seem to like that. It makes my life easier. And I have a plan. So now it feels good to have a woman just kind of, follow what you're doing.
Well, and it feels good as a woman to have you lead. Mm-hmm. That is, I mean, not only do you feel safe in your nervous system, but it's a huge turn on too. Mm-hmm. So it just increases the polarity and the magnetism and the electricity that's going. So, wow. I mean, this is really great stuff. So thank you for sharing. You have a really solid understanding and embodiment of masculinity. I'm really glad we had this conversation. It was the right time for sure. We'll have to have more. And what do you want to share about how people can find you or connect with you if they're interested in, just exploring more?
Probably the easiest way is just to email me, which my email is hoodwinked, which is my favorite Disney movie. 29936 at Gmail is kind of the easiest way to get a hold to me.
Amazing. Well, thank you. I'll include that in the notes below. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here, sharing your wisdom and your journey. And this is the embodiment of a leader. And you have so many great qualities of just, you're putting yourself out there for yourself, and you're just showing up for others. It's truly inspirational. So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Well, have a great day. We'll see you next time.